Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I have not filmed a video in quite a while, I think like a month, but I have been in school, so I haven't really had time to start filming or like editing or any of that. But now that I have like a few days off, I thought I could do my June, July, and August wrap up. I don't usually wait this long to like do a full on wrap up, but just because of everything like the summer and school, this is like my culmination of all the 3 months that I have read, like the summer months, I guess. And yeah, I have a whole stack of books here that I am going to go over all of my thoughts and ratings, as well as books that I've read on my Kindle. And yeah, I'm just gonna give you guys a basic synopsis of the book and then my ratings and reviews from Fable. The reason you might be wondering like why I'm looking over here, I have my notes pulled up on my laptop for each book that I talk about, so yeah, that's why I'm looking over here. So the first book that I read in June was The Conditions of Will, and you're basically following a London-based professional lie detector named Georgia, and she has been kind of apart from her family for a while because of their like closed-mindedness towards her brother who is gay, and they live in South Carolina and are kind of conservative, so that's why. But her brother is like a recovering alcoholic, and they have to return to the States for her father's funeral, where she comes face to face with her brother's like AA sponsor, who's basically helping him recover from like alcohol usage, like an overabundance of alcohol. It's much more than that. You're kind of uncovering like a mystery within the story. And so I gave The Conditions of Will 4.25 stars, and my favorite review I wrote, "Now I know why it's called The Conditions of Will. Such an interesting premise, and I like how it wasn't just about the romance between Sam and Georgia, but also the intertwining mystery of their father's will. Sam Penny was very different from B.J. Ballantyne, which is Jess's other MMC in the Magnolia Park series, one of them. And Jess's writing is always beautifully written and unlike any other writing I've read before. Also, the details of the penny coins around each chapter when she's texting Sam was such a creative touch, which I really loved. And these were some quotes that I really liked. So girls like them who bat their eyes as they pick and choose from the Bible to create a world they're comfortable to exist in." Then the other one was, "I'm sorry, no," Alexis says in a way that sounds like he means it, "and I wonder what it might cost a person to spend their whole lives apologizing for loving who they love." So yeah, this book has a very big theme of like, because they're Christian, so like Christianity and how that involves like the like LGBTQ plus plot line as well, and how the family deals with that while also being like kind of conservative and very like religious. The next book that I read was called Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney, and I read this from the library, so I don't have it right now. But basically, you're following Grady, who in the prologue is calling his wife on his way home, on her way home to share exciting news. And they're on the phone while she's driving, so she like kind of stops the car very abruptly, and something happens where she kind of disappears essentially, but her phone is still there, and Grady doesn't know like what happened at all. So a year later, he's still like very overcome with grief and like very desperate to know what happened to Abby, who is his wife. So he travels to a tiny Scottish island to try to get his life back on track, but then he sees a woman who looks exactly like his missing wife. And basically the book you're following is like the thrilling aspect of trying to see who that woman is and uncover the mystery of how Abby went missing. I gave this 3.25 stars, and I said that, whoa, that was not how I expected it to end. And I put a spoiler in the review, which I'm not gonna say. But yeah, you can read it if you like go to my Fable. At the end of my review, I basically just said, anyway, I think Abby, the wife, is better off without Grady because of what happens. Some quotes that I liked. Some trees shed their leaves and lose almost everything every year, but then they grow again, side by side. People could learn a lot from trees. It's strange to think that this spectacular night sky is always above us, wherever we are. We're all just too busy down to remember to look up. Wives think their husbands will change, but they don't. Husbands think their wives won't change, but they do. Next book that I read in June was One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. This is her newest release, and you're following Alice, who is a photographer, and she's basically just been comfortable on the sidelines, like letting people shine in her photographs. And one summer, like a few years ago, she took this very important photograph for her career of these two boys and one girl on like a boat on the lake in Barry's Bay, and that basically like jump-started her career. The MMC, Charlie, was one of the boys in that picture, and they end up reconnecting at Barry's Bay when Alice goes with her grandma to stay there for the summer. I gave this 4 stars, and I said I could definitely feel the summer vibes coming right off of the page. Carly Fortune's descriptions and settings never disappoint. I could vividly picture Barry's Bay. Charlie was the opposite of nonchalant, which I really liked and thought that was very good for Alice. And here were 2 quotes that I liked. Here I am, days away from my 33rd birthday, in the same spot where I swam as a teenager, when my eyes began to open to the vastness of the world beyond my own. And then, I want you to know that I don't think you're a turtle. No, you're a Pegasus unicorn, Alice Everly. You're one of a kind. That's kind of like an inside joke because one of their floaties on the lake is like a Pegasus unicorn, they call it. Yeah. Next book I read was Pet Sematary by Stephen King. And you're following this family with 2 kids, I think. And they moved to a rural area in Maine because the father just got a new job at, I think, University of Maine. Seems perfect from the outside, but of course Stephen King is a horror author, so there's definitely something sinister lying beneath it. What that is for this book is the nearby woods like has this very creepy cemetery, which they then later find out is where all the kids go to bury their pets. And it's definitely has some supernatural aspects to it, which you kind of find out as you read and go on. I gave this 3 stars because for me it wasn't necessarily scary, which says a lot because I do get scared very easily, but it was filled with lots of like rambling, slow-paced setting of scenes. And I don't think this book needed to be jam-packed with so many pages as it did, because even for me as a first-time Stephen King reader, the premise was simple to understand, and we didn't need to keep prolonging the story. A quote that I liked, perhaps this is what people do with the inexplicable, he thought. This is what they do with the irrational that refuses to be broken down into the normal causes and effects that run the Western world. Maybe this was how your mind coped with the flying saucer you saw hovering silently over your backfield one morning, casting its own tight pool of shadow. The rain of frogs, the hand from under the bed that stroked your bare foot in the dead of night. Like I think that quote was basically saying your mind kind of tries to justify all the weird, creepy things, but it's still there, like you can't escape it. Next, I read If Only I Had Told Her, which is the sequel to If He Had Been With Me. There's 3 POVs in this. There's Finn, Jack, who's Finn's best friend, and then Autumn later in life after everything happens. So yeah, it's really just like nostalgic for me to go when I went back to read this book. because I read If He Had Been With Me, I think in like 2023, and that was a 5-star. So I really did love this book, but of course it's not like what I would have wanted things to end, but I liked getting Autumn's point of view in the end and like seeing what happens after the first book, and also how Finn was in high school, and like just kind of seeing his thoughts and his like perspective of things. I gave this 4.5 stars, and I said it was very bittersweet, still very tragic, but I think this was how Autumn's story was supposed to happen, to end up with her and Finney's daughter, because if not for his death, like she said, she probably wouldn't have kept her. I love this author's writing, and I couldn't put it down. My favorite quotes were, "This year the roses completed their lives' work, bloomed in the time they were given, and accepted their fate," which I think is very, like, it relates so much to Autumn and just her life. And the second quote was, "But for today, I can feel how Finney is still with me." Following that, I read Say You'll Remember Me, which is Abby Jimenez's newest release, and I really like this book. I know there's a lot of mixed reviews of it, but I don't know, I thought it was very well written and I like the plot. So you're following this veterinarian who is the MMC, Xavier, or Xavier, I don't know how to say it. And he meets Samantha when she has to bring her cat in to his clinic, and they have this one very incredible and seemingly endless date, possibly the best in living history. That's from the synopsis. And Samantha is forced to, like, kind of reevaluate what she wants to do, because after this date, she's like moving back to her family because her mom has to mention she has to like help out with that. She really does not want to leave, and Xavier doesn't want her to leave either, but they kind of have to figure out like the long distance portion of it. I gave this 4 stars, and I said I really enjoyed this. I love the sweet vibes from Samantha and Xavier, and you can just tell they're just such a chill couple. Not a super new concept. We have all read or watched these similar types of rom-coms, but at least they're not toxic. The literal only point of conflict was their distances, if you can even call that like a point of contention. I gave Sounds Like Love 3.25 stars, and I said for my review, I'm sorry, but the man bun was an ick, but that's just a me thing, I think. Anyways, this had all the Ashley Poston signature whimsical and cozy vibes that I was looking for. I loved the musical elements because it added a unique element that I could relate to, since playing an instrument has been a part of my life for a decade. The main character was not my favorite out of all Ashley Poston's FMCs, because she just felt a bit oblivious that she was like literally living her dream career. But overall, it was a good magical summer read. Some quotes that I liked include, "There were some songs you made special songs for first dances, songs for funerals, songs for heartbreak and forgetting, and then there were the songs that made you. And what an enchanted thing music was, to persist long after its performers. I wanted to know the mundane things, whether he liked top sheets and if he wore his socks inside out because the seam bothered him, all the things that people took for granted." So that was my review for Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. The next book that I read was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and this is also her newest release. And basically, it is about Alice, who is a writer, and then Hayden is the MMC, who is also a writer, and they're both competing to write the biography of this very famous like heiress of the 20th century named Margaret Ives. And if you didn't know, this book is based off of Taylor Swift's The Last Great American Dynasty. And yeah, it's very close to what that song is about. I gave this 4.5 stars. A lot of people did not really like this at all, given that Emily Henry's she's one of the most popular authors in the romance genre, but surprisingly, a lot of people didn't like this, but I surprisingly did. I don't know what it is with me, like, disagreeing with a lot of the mixed reviews this year, but yeah, I said, what do you mean people are mad this didn't have as much romance as it did plot? I personally loved reading about Margaret's family tree and see everything coming together in the end. I think this book showed very different kinds of love, but in the end, it's like the mosaic, bringing them together. And by mosaic, I mean like this design like on the cover, which has like a meaning in the book when you read it. And then I had a spoiler, but I'm not going to read that. Some quotes that I loved include what, in the end, matters most about a person's identity. And that I think you live in a world that's more interesting than the one most people live in. And I wish I could live in it too. I feel myself beaming. I'll take you sometime. I'd like that, he says. Your heart's broken without her, Peggy, he said, and mine can't be whole until yours is. I welcome her to this great, big, beautiful life. Next, I read We Used to Live Here, following this like queer couple, Charlie and Eve. They just moved into this like perfect neighborhood. They love their house, but one day this family shows up at their house claiming to have lived there, like that was his childhood home. And the genre of this book is horror, so just be aware of that before you go into this. As soon as the strangers like enter their home, a lot of very just like chilling stuff happens, including like the family's youngest child going missing. The family just cannot take the hint that their chore, so to say, of this house is over from like the new owners. Like they just moved in, they want to settle in, but this family keeps asking questions and just like it's literally staying the night multiple times and they just never go away. And it's just a very chilling book and plot. I gave this 2.5 stars, which is one of the lowest books that I've rated this year. A lot of people did like it. So my review said, leaves you with the sickening feeling in your stomach. This was the first book I ever read on my Kindle, and I did read it in one sitting. That being said, this was just too much for me. It also left a lot of questions unanswered. Following that, I read It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan, and you're following this former like child actress who starred in a very popular sitcom, but she was kind of like the punchline of the show. And she is like this creative executive at a studio company that creates more like shows and stuff. And she has to work with this guy who is it's kind of like an enemies to lovers situation, but not really. They just don't have a good they just haven't had like good interactions in the past. They have to try to like recruit this guy to sing an original song for their movie. I gave this 4.25 stars. I actually really liked this book. I said I loved this main character. She was so funny, but also really relatable. Dan I really liked in the beginning, but towards the end, he was a bit too nonchalant for me, and I didn't like that. I wish he at least could have gotten mad at Jack because he was really rude to Jane. Some quotes I like. This feels like wealth, I think. This is the one thing you save up for. You live your whole life so that you can be surrounded by too many people in too small of a room and tell the story of how it all happened. Love happens over breakfast, Cormac smiles at Renee. If you want to know the secret to a happy marriage, that's it. What does that mean, I say, if you don't mind me asking? Love happens over breakfast. It's just something Cormac said when we were first married. Romance happens over dinner, the candlelight, the wine. Everyone looks a little better than they usually do, Cormac says and laughs. Renee rolls her eyes. Well, yes, she says, that's the romance of it. But at breakfast, everything's just as it is, in the light of day. No one wears lipstick to breakfast, and this is where you talk about your day and the part of the roof that might leak this fall. You bring your real self to breakfast. The next book that I read in July was One Dark Window, and this is when Elspeth meets a mysterious highwayman on the forest road, which is kind of like a hunter in their realm and world. She has to join this to find a cure for this for this disease that's like run rampant in their kingdom, and one that's actually affected her and like her mind. So she has this like nightmare voice in her head that she's always had, but a lot of like most people don't know about this, and she is just so happens to join with the king's nephew, who is captain of the most dangerous men in this kingdom. And together they have to gather these 12 Providence cards, which are all the keys to the cure of this like disease. I gave this 4 stars. I said it was intriguing in the beginning, but got a bit boring towards the end. I didn't see the twist coming from the MMC though, given that he hunts down people who like possess this magic. And if you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. Some quotes that I liked were, "But just as there were 2 edges to every blade, there were 2 sides to every Providence card. Magic came at a cost." The next book was Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice, and this book is like the epitome of a Gilmore Girls fall essence and vibe. It's a cozy YA romance, and it's like in this quaint village in New England, just like Gilmore Girls, where it's like set in Connecticut. And 16-year-old Lucy is a employee at her mom's coffee shop, but she really hates pumpkin spice lattes, which is rare because she's like in the epitome of that season in this town. Like that's what they're known for. All the tourists come to their town to see all the leaves changing, and it's kind of like their coffee shop is like kind of a tourist trap to get as many customers as possible, but that's why they do so well, because it's like known to be good in the fall. So yeah, it's called Cup of Joe, and her mom owns it. It has not been great in the off season though, because a lot of people are not going to this small like New England town like in summer or like winter or spring, because that's not their like main season where they shine. Fall is like their go-to season. And this new coffee chain, which is kind of like, I thought of it as like a Starbucks or like a Dunkin' Donuts. It's like a corporation, not really like a small business like how Lucy's mom's business is. And they moved like right across the street from them, and she's really worried they're not gonna get any business anymore because of this super well-known chain. So she basically has to try to find the perfect pumpkin spice latte, and she has befriended this guy Jack, who is the new kid in this town and just so happens to be one of the sons of the owners of this new coffee chain. I gave it 3.75 stars. I said this was so cute and exactly what I was looking for. Rival coffee shops baking a mother and daughter just like Lorelai and Rory, and trying to make the perfect PSL. I usually don't read many YA books anymore, but this was a pleasant surprise. Quotes that I loved. It's why I read so much. Sometimes it's nice to escape to a different world when mine keeps changing. I walk off into the cool night air with my friends. I'm not sure where we're going yet, but that's okay. It's just like very quintessential YA vibes, and I really loved it. Next, I read The River Has Roots, and this was a very short book, which if you are looking for that, this would be really good. And it's deals with a lot of fairy magic. You're following these 2 sisters in this family, and the trees are these like enchanted willows are very important to their like community and their family. But when one of the sisters rejects a suitor basically in favor for this other person that she has found in this land, but they're like on the outskirts of this community, she kind of severs her sister's bond and also makes their lives at risk. I gave this like a solid 3 stars. Said although it was hard to get into / understand the premise of the story, I eventually think I got it. It's a story of sisters at its core. Such a unique plot and filled with beautiful writing, musical of metaphors, and a magical river. Glad it ended how it did, and Esther got the best of both worlds, literally and figuratively. Following that, I read The Naturals, and this is about a bunch of like teens who are basically in this section of the FBI, and they all each have a very like unique skill only that they have, and nobody else can really hone that skill. And you're in the POV of Cassie. The FBI like really needs her because what she can do no other teens can do. She is really good at reading people. As piecing together the tiniest details, she can tell you who you are and what you want just from like the littlest things. You also follow like a bunch of the other teen storylines within this. Even though I've only read the first book, it's a whole series. My review said, I actually gave this 4 stars. I said, not gonna lie, the part where Cassie's describing the killer and his victim scared me. But overall, this was very intriguing and fast-paced. Can't wait to see what is happening in the rest of the series and solve her mom's murder. Right now, hashtag Team Michael, just because I don't like the grumpy, nonchalant trope, which is basically the other guy, Dean's character. Some quotes that I liked, talking to them had felt natural, no pun intended. The title of the book is called The Naturals. And then Michael had never made any secret of the fact that he was pursuing me. Dean had fought any attraction he felt for me every step of the way, which is kind of why I like Michael. Kind of giving like golden retriever vibes as of right now, like the first book. I read The Bright Years, and you're following 3 generations of women in the same family. It starts with Ryan, who is one of the MMC's mom's perspective in the book, and she's basically trying to get away from Ryan's dad, who's like very abusive. And then you follow Ryan and Lillian, who is his wife. They have a child named Georgette, but they both each have secrets that they're not telling each other. Like Lillian has a previous child, like she wasn't married, she just has a child, but she had to give him away for adoption, and she's always like wondered how he is and how he's been doing, but she hasn't told Ryan, and Ryan has really been struggling with the alcohol addiction that Lillian doesn't know about. And so their kid, Georgette, comes of age watching their marriage like rise and fall. Then the next POV, you're following Georgette, which is their kid, and Lillian's son comes searching for stories about his birth mother, which is Lillian, and Georgette kind of has to uncover her family's history and tell her dad about her half brother, I guess he is, because Ryan didn't know either. And yeah, I gave this 4.75 stars. I said it was a beautiful story. I can't believe this is the author's first work, like this is her debut novel. At its core, this is a story of motherhood told through multiple generations. Very melancholy, but a realistic portrayal of just that, life. I love this. These quotes are some of the best I have ever read. She sighs, her breath like milk and her eyes like water. I love your father, she says, very much. She takes a shaky breath, but she reaches for her son's small hands as muscles gather and tighten around her bottom lip. I love you most, Ryan. With a nod toward the mother who birthed and fed and sacrificed for him, Ryan leaves and Elise turns to come back inside. She's a wave in an ocean of reminders, and I am quietly drowning. The baby cries, sudden and shrill and frantic. The mother pants relief, and the midwife guides the father to cut the cord. A protest twists inside me. No, let them stay together. But this is where it starts. We begin to say goodbye as soon as we say hello. Death is a corollary of birth, and to welcome life is to grant loss. Finally, the last book that I read in August is The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. And you're following Osric, and he is an assassin who really needs healing. And Orion is a healer and a scientist, but they're like enemies. hence the title. Orian is desperately needs funding to help heal her patients. So Osric kind of bribes her, and he donates a lot of money so she can help heal him. They have to work together to kind of heal his illness because it's not a very common one. And while they do that, there's also romance building. I gave this 3 stars. I said this was so funny and so cheeky. I actually LOL'd so many times while reading. I wouldn't say this was a fantasy per se. I would usually go for, because even though it does say enemies to lovers, it was more playful and comical. I usually prefer more high stakes and actual enemies to lovers. Not to say this wasn't refreshing though. Also, the magic system was so creative. Some quotes that I liked. If this treatment was a cure for evil, it would be fatal to you. There was such witchery in a pair of bright eyes. Pity they had to be hers. The heads thank you for your understanding in these challenging times. Orian took the memo, grateful to have been reminded about the challenging times. She might have forgotten about them otherwise. Osric made some calculations and concluded that he had a solid 1 out of 3 on Faram's mom's marking scheme for desirable husbands. Not that he had any wish to be a desirable husband. It was simply good to know where one stood. See, it was just stuff like that that made it very cheeky and funny and not very high stakes, but it was still really fun to read, and just a fast-paced kind of mindless fantasy, which I feel like you don't find a lot of times. Okay, those were the 16 books that I read in June, July, and August. Usually I will not wait this long to do a wrap-up, but like I said, there's just been a lot of stuff happening. So yeah, I hope you guys got some good book recs, or maybe if you've already read them, you want to know what other people think of these books too, which is good. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate it if you do. And yeah, I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Bye.